You know what's hard is I still remember the good old days. You know, when you could be a Christian and nobody complained about it. You could just, everything was all about you. You know, everything was all about what you believed. And everybody just, nobody said anything, so you just kind of, I don't know, imagine that everybody else felt the same way you did, and saw all the holiday stuff, and heard all the Christmas music, and felt the same way when they said the Pledge of Allegiance, or even just looked at your dollars and saw "In God We Trust." You know, you just kind of got to assume that everybody felt the same way. You know, God and country, it's all tied together. It's all part of the same thing. And I miss those olden days. It wasn't that long ago. It was what? Well, shoot, I didn't really even notice an atheist around. I didn't realize there were so many of them. I suppose I knew that there were a few. I guess I lumped them in with Satan worshipers. You know, they're atheist Satan worshipers were kind of one and the same thing, and they wore black and had upside down crosses, and were just evil bad people, and you just never saw them because they wouldn't go where Christians go. You know, they wouldn't like the same things Christians like. You know, just having fun and being around people and doing happy things. They, you know, I think of atheists. You know, they dress in black. They're the goth people. You know, they're always in black, and they just look evil and sinister. But I never really saw any, so that's just how I imagine atheists. I didn't really see any. But now it's like everywhere I look, there's atheists, and they're not quiet about it anymore. And it's really kind of hard because I liked it better when it just seemed like everybody was celebrating Jesus' birth, and the whole world was just praising God on Easter. I liked it better when it was like that, and I could just imagine that the whole earth was bowing down to Jesus and marveling at his majesty. It was so much nicer when I could just imagine that everybody believed the same way as me and thought the same things. Just affirmed for me how right I am, you know, because so many people agree. It was real positive for me and uplifting that there were so many people that were on my team all agreeing with me. So I knew I had found the truth. And now it's so hard to do that, because it's so hard to feel that way, because there's all these people, and some of them are even kind of smart, saying that, you know, pointing things out that in the Bible that I didn't know was there. Yeah, I just, the Old Testament's so frickin' boring, and it doesn't really pertain to my beliefs, because my beliefs are all about Jesus. Of course, I did read once, or maybe it was one of the Bible studies that I got to be in when I was at Camp Sambika, where they talk about Jesus is one of the Trinity, and he was around, you know, in the Old Testament. Anytime you see the reference in the Old Testament to Lord, that's actually referring to the Son, part of the Trinity, part of the Godhead is the Son, and his title in the Old Testament is Lord. So when I think about it, it's like, I guess the Old Testament does have significance to my beliefs, because it's talking about what Jesus did before he came to earth, what Jesus did. I mean, if it's true, and of course this is just the take on the person who ran the Bible study that I was in. Everybody, that's another thing, they all have different takes. I liked it so much better when I wasn't aware of all the different takes there are. I kind of grew up in it. Well, I didn't grow up in a sheltered environment, but I really blossomed as a Christian at the Bible camp. And that's where I found out about so many things. And he was busy in the Old Testament, and he wasn't really stopping a lot of the, or any of the atrocities that were going on. So these atheists keep mentioning these verses in the Old Testament and things in the Old Testament I don't really want to think about. I don't want to think about God ordering pregnant women cut open with swords. That's just gross. I like to think that God cares for little babies, and that every life is precious to God, and that a little fetus inside a pregnant mother who doesn't have any way to protect him or herself and is totally vulnerable, that God would want to protect a little fetus. And of course I'm pro-life. I would think God would be pro-life, but he orders the slaughter of pregnant women, and deliberately, specifically the cutting open of their with a sword. That's just so gross and so evil. And the whole, just stuff like that. Happy is he who dashes thy little ones against rocks. It's like he gets off on slaughtering little babies. Anyway, this is just so... Atheists just make it also much more difficult. I liked it when I thought everybody agreed. I liked it when I didn't have to have these verses that I didn't really want to read or know about pointed out all the time. It sucks. Now I have to try to figure out, well, I know God's loving, but how can I... And I can say, well, it was God who did those things, not Jesus, except that Jesus is God, and Jesus was part of God. And Jesus, if that interpretation is true, and that anytime you hear or read Lord in the Old Testament pertaining to God, that's Jesus. So the Lord is who made everything at the start in Genesis. The Lord, Jesus, made us. Jesus is the one who made us, and Jesus is the one who made the planet and everything. I think it's also the Lord that's in the cloud or in the pillar that leads the Israelites from Egypt. So anyway, it's just getting harder and harder to be a Christian. Ignorance is a good thing. I don't know. Atheists they're really pro reading and research and all these things, and it's like they're forcing that on us. I don't like that. I like just ignorance is nice. I could my faith could be so strong when I didn't have to read and know about this stuff. It was so much stronger when I didn't have to know about... There's so many awful things that God/Jesus does in the Old Testament. A guy is out picking up sticks on the wrong day of the week, and God orders him to be stoned to death. That's, it's just not a story I ever needed to know about, and it just makes me sick. And maybe, I'm trying to figure out, maybe Satan had something to do with it, but, there's only so many things that I can modify in my head to explain all these things, Oh, and that's another thing, Satan, who's supposed to be so evil and wicked, he kills 10 people in the Bible, in the whole Bible. Satan kills 10 people, and he has to actually get permission from God to do it. He can't just do it. He gets God's permission to kill these 10 people. That would be Job's children. 10. And here God is like, in every other page in the Bible, there's just blood and genocide and, oh, I'm sorry I did this, I'm going to destroy this, I'm going to destroy that, I'm going to kill all the firstborn of Egypt after I made Pharaoh say no. I'm just really frustrated. I wish that I could just go back. Getting on the internet makes being a Christian so much harder. And I just wish I could go back and not know the stuff that I know, and go back to, I wish they would just not have the Old Testament as part of the Bible, and take out all those verses that make God seem so just hideously evil. Why do they have those verses there to confuse us? Why don't just have the good stuff in there? Because that's what we want to hear. That's what we want to love and worship and praise. We don't want to praise a baby killer, and a guy who orders 32,000 virgins, little girls, to be the spoils of war for the Israelites. Women have no value at all in the Bible, and that's all okay with the God that I thought loved me. I must not have nearly as much value as a man to this God, because all through the Bible, women have half the value of men. Anyway, thank you, atheists. You really just fucking made it so hard for me to be strong in my faith. I have all these this stupid thinking is going on, and it's just, I can't get it. It's just making it really hard. So I miss the olden days. I miss when I just could imagine that everybody thought just like I did, and nobody disagreed. It was so much easier.